My partner is worried that I might compromise my vegetarianism in order to travel to Japan for a week. How do I handle this? Original post: my partner is upset that I could compromise my vegetarianism while traveling to Japan for a week. For the past 4 years or so, I, 34F, have been vegetarian. My 34-year-old partner loves meat. He loves steak and other meats, and he cooks really well. I've never been asked to start eating meat by him. He has never been urged to give up meat by me. What he eats is entirely up to him and everyone else, therefore I don't care. I don't discuss or advocate vegetarianism, and I attempt to make my own food when necessary to avoid upsetting other people. I'll put in the effort to pick a restaurant that everyone will enjoy because it can be challenging to find a vegetarian option, other than a side salad. Being a vegetarian hasn't seemed to be a problem or a major inconvenience, but I could be mistaken. My boyfriend's mom changed her risotto recipe to use vegetable broth instead of chicken broth so I could eat it when I was on a week-long vacation with his family. I didn't inquire. I believe my partner recommended it to her. I was truly grateful. My partner and I looked for places that would serve vegetarian food for me when we went on a week-long trip. Because we were on vacation, we ate at seafood restaurants most of the time, though I was able to find veggie burgers or something similar most of the time. My opinion. I will shortly be traveling to Japan for work. In order to properly appreciate the cuisine and culture, I told my boyfriend that I was thinking of eating meat during that week. That includes wagyu, ramen, sushi, and similar dishes. I'm not sure if I'll be able to convince myself to eat meat while traveling because I fear I'll feel bad about it. Because I feel awful about the way animals are raised, treated, farmed, and typically murdered, I have chosen to be vegetarian. I am aware that I can purchase meat that has been raised ethically, but I decide to completely avoid it. Again, I abstain, but I miss steak and sushi the most. According to my lover, I wouldn't contemplate breaking my vegetarianism to have a steak with him, but he is furious that I would for this week-long trip. He feels unworthy as a result of it. It gives him the impression that the trip and my fellow employees are more significant than he is. I am aware that he forms ties with others over food. He enjoys cooking for others, but he has never been able to prepare a steak for me, and we have never been able to have a steak meal together. I just eat whatever else is served at steakhouses, even though we've been there before. It's not the same as us sharing a steak together. He added that it seems pointless that his mother went out of her way to make the risotto without chicken broth, that she looked for restaurants where I could eat something other than salad, that he cooks stir-fries or other dishes and leaves the meat separate on the flat-top grill until I serve myself the vegetables. And then he combines everything together with the meat, and that I can't enjoy the best shrimp he's ever had on our vacation. He was so upset that we couldn't share a steak that he started crying. I know that thinking about eating meat while on the trip would make him feel horrible, but I haven't proposed to join him for a steak. I regret causing him to feel this way and diminishing his significance or deservingness. I expressed my regret for causing him to feel this way. That's not it. I assured him it's not that he is unworthy. This trip is likely to happen only once in a lifetime, and I'm worried that if I eat a steak at home with him, it may turn into a slippery slope. I informed him that I had no intention of ceasing to be a vegetarian. How can I get around this? Editing to add, when he told me how he felt about this, I listened, apologized for making him feel so poorly, and validated him. I can see why he's upset, and I should have considered the possible outcomes before announcing aloud that I might eat meat on the trip. I expressed my gratitude to him during the chat for sharing his feelings with me, and for letting me know how significant it would be to him. I therefore proposed to buy him a steak. Additionally, since having steak with him wouldn't be vegetarian, I let him know that I don't want it to become a regular occurrence because I desire to remain vegetarian, or at least partly vegetarian. I am aware that he values eating meals with me. It's significant to me as well. But I was unaware that he was really hoping we could share a steak, and I would be able to join him. I constantly remark on how delicious the meat looks and smells as he cooks it, and he has commented, "I wish you could taste this once." In retrospect, his remark most likely hinted that he hoped I would invite him to join me for a steak. He hasn't asked me whether I'd want to have steak with him tonight. Or, are you ever going to eat meat for me or with me? That would be a different discussion if I had told him no to those queries, and then added that I was thinking about eating meat in Japan. I haven't turned him down in that manner, but I also hadn't proposed to have steak with him until this discussion. I was unaware that he had such a strong need for this particular item. I assumed he was content in this area because we have a lot of meals together and he consumes as much meat as he likes. Together, we had never visited a vegetarian restaurant. I make an effort to limit my vegetarianism. It is not something I want to happen. I bring meals to his house, and when I go to restaurants that don't have any other vegetarian alternatives, I grab a kid's grilled cheese or a side salad. I don't think much of it. I can totally relate to his feelings of guilt. That isn't the purpose of this post. I simply want to know the best course of action. Additionally, I didn't give it much thought before telling him that I was thinking about eating meat on that trip. I didn't consider how he would feel, how he might feel betrayed, or how I might feel. The thought of actually eating meat, etc. would make me feel uncomfortable and guilty. We discussed it, and I mentioned that if I decide to eat meat on that trip, I'll need to gradually add it to my diet before we go to Japan, or have a steak together. I am aware that it exists. I believe it would be better for me to simply avoid eating meat while traveling, given how nervous I am about actually considering eating. Now that I know my partner wants to go out to eat steak with me, I still need to find out how to bring up the subject with him, even if I offered to do so. I appreciate everyone's feedback. Here is an update on what transpired. This will take a long time. We had a few major arguments in the 2 weeks before I left for Japan, and he informed me he couldn't do it anymore 5 days before I left. He's tired and can't handle all the arguments. I only concentrate on what he is doing incorrectly, and I don't accept responsibility for my own mistakes. I don't talk about the aspects of myself that I need to improve enough. I don't take enough responsibility for my poor communication skills and how they lead to arguments, and I don't talk about my insecurities enough. A bit more background on the arguments. First argument. One Sunday we had a conversation regarding my feelings. I told him I was lonely because he could see I was depressed. I told him that I've been feeling torn about certain work-related issues as well as some family and friend-related issues when he inquired how I'd been feeling lately. We discussed the other topics instead than loneliness. He became dispassionate and switched into solution mode. I went through that process with him first since he seemed anxious to find out, even if it wasn't what I needed. There were a few things that annoyed me during the conversation. He began by telling me that he didn't believe I truly felt that way. Secondly, no empathy was shown. He inquired about my feelings. I told him poorly. I started by saying that it depresses me when he inquires about my feelings. When I express my feelings to him, he responds, "I don't think you feel that way." This is not the first instance of it. He has said, "I don't believe you" on other occasions when I've asked him how I feel or what I think about something. You don't feel that way, in my opinion. Feelings like that are illogical. Not because of the explanation I provided him, but rather because of X, Y, and Z I believe you feel that way. In addition to assessing the problem, I would have preferred it if he had said something sympathetic like, "Ah, babe, that sucks, you feel so lonely, that's unfortunate to hear. What's happening?" I informed him that I needed some empathy, and that I valued the solution mode conversation. His body language shifted and he became quiet. I inquired whether he was upset. "Yeah, I'm upset," he said firmly. He said, "Because I'm only focusing on the things he did wrong," when I questioned why. He did everything else well, and made a great effort to manage the situation. But I just pointed out his mistakes. He accomplished other things correctly, I reminded him. I also brought up previous exchanges in which he had complained to me about not getting what he wanted at the time. For instance, he requested more tenderness or empathy, and he is quick to point that out and let me know what I'm doing incorrectly and what he needs from me. That was pretty much the end of this conversation. A week or two later, I brought it up again, and he apologized for his poor handling of it. He informed me that he and his friend Aaron were planning to see a scary movie. I'm okay with them watching movies together. Just the two of them, once in a while. But this time, it made me feel uneasy since, aside from saying we should go to our favorite brunch spot almost every weekend or simply hanging out at home, I don't feel like he gets eager to make plans with me or actually tries to do so, and in any case. In the moment, I became quite silent and began to cry. And since I know it's an insecurity of mine, I was attempting to process how I felt and choose whether it was worthwhile to bring it up or whether I should just deal with it alone and keep it to myself. When he asked me what was wrong, I decided it was safe enough to discuss. I felt very insecure when I told him this. He informed me that my feelings were illogical. He has never done anything to cause me to feel that way, and I shouldn't feel that way. I gave an explanation of who I was and why. I feel insecure because I want him to tell me that he enjoys watching scary movies. If the rest of our relationship had been good, this probably wouldn't have made me feel that way. However, this somewhat tilted the scales because I had been feeling unappreciated for some time. He cited several reasons why I shouldn't be feeling this way and insisted that it doesn't make logic. He finally acknowledged that he understood what I was saying and responded, "Okay." When he asked if I felt hurt, I replied, "Yes, I believe I do." He then desired an opportunity to express his viewpoint. He immediately went into why I shouldn't feel that way and why it doesn't make sense for me to feel that way. And yet he has never taken any action to elicit such feeling in me. That went against what I believed we had just decided when he stated he understood my feelings, which is why I became so irate. After I told him I felt heard, he became agitated because I was bothering him about it once more. He claimed that I wasn't giving him the tenderness he desired. After that, we exchanged back and forth as I tried to explain why his reactions to me were upsetting, and he continued to insist on the same points. It was never settled. Argument 3 on a Friday evening. I was departing for Japan. I had a flight at around 7 o'clock. He planned to drive an hour or so away the same day to spend the weekend with his best friend. We agreed to hang together that day, but never confirmed any arrangements or times after I told them I wouldn't be working that day so I could get ready for the trip. We spoke a few weeks before that. I asked him what time he intended to leave on Friday to travel to his friend's place after we went out to dinner. There were no sentiments or attachments to the question. It was an honest one. I'm not sure what I was expecting him to say. But he responded between 3 and 5 p.m. However, when he told me 3:05, I realized that I felt awful since I had hoped that he would spend that time with me before my flight, possibly even taking me to the airport. I had never told him this before. We haven't discussed it yet. I informed him, however, that I felt ignored and that I hoped he would have taken me into consideration. I made a mistake by claiming I felt unconsidered when I should have told him I wanted to hang out before my flight. However, since it would have disrupted his friend time and altered his plans, I'm not sure whether I would have felt comfortable telling him that. How he would have reacted to that is beyond me. Well, maybe not. He became really agitated. His body language instantly shifted when I attempted to explain why I felt ignored. He scoffed, smirked, pushed himself back a bit in his chair, and began to interrupt me. I became agitated and urged him not to interrupt me while I was attempting to express how I felt, and I could tell he was going to become defensive. His attempt to interrupt me and his change in demeanor undoubtedly set me off. Not again, I told myself. Not now. Make sure you have the opportunity to express your thoughts and advocate for yourself. He became even more irate that I wouldn't allow him to interrupt me because I thought he would become defensive. He claimed that he did think about me, that his intention to depart between 3 and 5 was not set in stone, and that this heated argument would not have occurred if I had simply allowed him to interrupt. He claimed that because my emotions were predicated on a false assumption, they weren't suitable. I assumed that he didn't think about me and that he was set on leaving between 3 and 5. He told me that the time limit wasn't firm and that he simply took it out of the air. Since he and his companion didn't yet have dinner plans, everything was up to him. I told him I understood his point of view, thanked him for clarifying it, and expressed regret for presuming he didn't take me into consideration. However, he was furious with me. He then went on to explain why what I had done was unacceptable. It wasn't acceptable that 1. I thought he didn't think of me. 2. 3. I pointed out his body language. 4. I remarked, I wish you would have taken me into consideration. I thought he would become defensive. As an aside, I have made a concerted effort to avoid using the term I wish you would with him, because it makes him feel terrible. This time I didn't succeed. I clarified that those thoughts were based on the information I had at the time, and even though they were incorrect, it's still acceptable for me to express my feelings to him first. He can then correct me. Yes, these plans aren't really that solid. I'm sorry you didn't feel taken into account. The plans are adaptable. I apologize for presuming that, and I can respond, okay, until I head to the airport. I would like to stay, for him. That didn't work. He maintained that none of this would have occurred if I had simply allowed him to interrupt. In the end, I apologized 3 times and reiterated his argument. During the summer, a similar situation occurred with the roles switched. I interrupted him to correct him after he made a mistaken assumption and became irritated. He informed me that I should listen to him before providing the right information since his sentiments are still his feelings and should be heard. It's challenging, but I concurred. I used the exchange as support for my argument that I deserve to be able to express my feelings to him before he interrupts. My presumption was incorrect, yet he still wanted to interrupt me. Then he became angry that I had changed my position so fast. I told him, okay, I understand, that works for me, and apologized for presuming he didn't think about me. He claimed that when this occurs, he goes wild. He explains his position when I feel awful about something. And I say, okay, I understand letting go of my initial emotions and siding with him. Because it feels like a big deal to me, he stated I'm gaslighting him. I back down once he gets all up. I made an effort to clarify that it's okay and healthy for someone to be given new information, think it over, and then adjust their strategy. Hearing him out and telling him, yeah, I made an assumption and I shouldn't feel bad about this anymore is beneficial. In any case, he was furious with me the entire evening. My poor communication was the cause of the entire altercation. I was expecting an apology from him when we awoke the following morning. He apparently believed that I would apologize to him. He informed me that it was over at that point. He ended our relationship, TL Doctor. I've returned from my work vacation to Japan. During the vacation, I abstained from eating meat and seafood. Overall, everything went really smoothly. Albeit I did consume several soups made with fish broth because it was difficult to avoid, and it made me feel ill. I'm having trouble now because of the breakup. The second story is up soon. When my dad told me he could no longer afford to feed me, I kicked him out. Am I the bad guy? Throwaway original post. The backstory is as follows. I currently possess my own home at the age of 28. My parents essentially forced me to move out when I was 18, so it wasn't really my choice. Since then, our relationship has been difficult. He has always been a heavy smoker and drinker, which led to many problems in the past. In the meantime, he didn't make loan payments and lost his house a few months ago. He phones me and tells me that he needs a place to stay while he recovers. I outlined certain guidelines. Rent is $400, food cost between $200 and $500 to $300, and smoking is not allowed in the residence at all. I'm your father, so I shouldn't have to pay, he says with a giggle. But I'm unmoving. He thus consents to buy groceries grudgingly. It's basically one issue after another from the moment he moves in. Makes a mess everywhere. Doesn't tidy up, smokes indoors despite my explicit warning that it's not acceptable, and drinks excessively. Then one day he just loses it over me having a girl over. I tell him, listen, he'll have to find somewhere else to stay if he can't respect my space after a while. He smacked me with the statement, I don't have the money to buy groceries this month last week. Why, I wonder. Well, you eat a lot, he says, and acknowledges that he bought booze and cigarettes with all of his money. For me. That was it. I had enough of him behaving like he owned the home and the memories of my teenage years spent with him. I told him to get out of here. Okay, AITA, I established clear limits, but he didn't adhere to them. Edit. I had no idea that my post would get so many responses. Thank you everybody for your support, and I'm happy that I'm not TA. I want to make a couple things clear. No, when he came in, we didn't have a formal contract. The method was oral. It won't be easy to kick him out because police don't usually help sons as much as they help fathers. In reaction, society expects a son to look after his elderly parents. I agreed to take him in part because of this. For example, perhaps he would modify his opinion of me if I could help him in some way. After years of mistreatment, I felt a great sense of validation from my own father, NG. Prison. Now I realize what a fool I was to take him in. If he won't go, how can I get him out? As soon as he left to acquire his supplies, I would change my hair and depart as well. It's cop time if he smashes anything. There is no census bot in a TA. The remarks made by OP were not pertinent. Before he even moved in, commenter 1NTA demonstrated his appreciation for you by saying, I shouldn't have to pay even if you give him a month's warning. Your charity should stop there. I let him till the first week of November, for example. In reality, he just needs to bring his cigarettes and alcohol. The majority of his belongings were in storage. Commenter 2NTA, dismiss him. Losing his own home apparently wasn't enough to make him realize that he needed to make some changes in his life. He must thus suffer the repercussions of breaking your reasonable regulations by being denied the opportunity to remain there again. And you can tell everyone who advises you should let him stay, if he involves his friends and family, which is inevitable, that they are more than happy to invite your father to stay at their house. Oop. The majority of my family has already cast me in a negative light. Lol, I'm not sure what they're going to tell me that they haven't already said. Commenter 3. NTA. He's probably used the saying my house, my rules at some point. And it's a two-edged sword. Oop. Yes, he did. He certainly did. He left today to give you an update. I hate to break the news to you, but the procedure was remarkably quiet. My dad informed me he needed to chat on the day of the last post. I prepared myself. I was very surprised and relieved by what he said. He declared that he would never get in touch with me again because he could not stand the contempt I had showed him. You failed me as a son, he said. I advised him to get in touch with me if he needed assistance in the future, but there were certain restrictions. He sneered, claimed he was going to leave shortly, and stopped speaking to me. He departed today. He didn't have much to pack, as I mentioned in the first post. He kept the majority of his belongings in storage. He didn't say goodbye or tell me where he was going. No, I felt at ease with it. My life was being cleansed of a poisonous aspect. Even after leaving home, I haven't felt the same sense of freedom as I do now. I would have wanted to at least know where he's going, but I don't care where he goes anymore. This is the update, oh well. Perhaps a little disappointed for this sub, but I'm glad things worked out for me. I appreciate all of your replies and guidance, it meant a lot. I'm going back to using my primary account to lurk. Peace. Top remarks. Commenter 1, we won't be grateful until the garbage is removed on its own. Congrats on your newfound tranquility. Change the locks and keep an eye on your credit history for a while, says commenter 2. Being safe is preferable to being sorry. Congratulations. I hope your name appears on the third list of independent commenters. In fact, I'm relieved it was a quiet departure. The fact that you defended yourself and refused to fall for the okidoki's attempt to hit you makes me even happier. It took a lot of maturing on your part to refuse to deal with him in the same way that you did as a child. He needed to leave. And it's wonderful that he did. If he has trouble embracing and appreciating the fact that you're an adult. Bravo. Since Oop's father has moved out and Oop removed the throwaway account, the editors have marked this as ended.